Hello, everybody, and welcome to Whispers Radio here on AM 1600 WKKX, the Valley's Watchdog, and UPRN, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network. It is 6:07 p.m., 76 degrees here in downtown Wheeling. My little thingy said it's mostly cloudy, but I think it's raining outside.
Let me spy out the window.
Oh, we got Lola the Spy. What's the verdict? See, I look towards the river. If you look towards the river, you can see like a hint of...
Something, yeah.
Something. I don't know. Somebody stand outside and give us a call.
If it's raining, it's not... I mean, the road is wet.
Yeah.
But I think it came... Because, you know, my fear, those bay windows suck the rain right in. And I think it was coming straight down. It doesn't look like it's blowing at all.
No.
I knew that Wheeling split. It works every time. I mean, we might get a little here, but I'll bet you north and south of here got trashed. Yep.
All right, give us a call, 304-214-1600. If you're out of the area, 1-866-514-1600. I'm Jordan Cline. She's Sarah Cline.
Hello.
And she is the lovely, lovely Lola Miller. Oh, Lola.
You know, one of these days somebody's going to sue you for false advertising.
Whatever. She is my wife. What?
No, not Sarah.
Oh. I got you. I got you, Lola. I want to say, just because I got a firecracker under my butt for some reason.
Yes, you do. You came in here begging to argue politics, and I would not do it. I would not do it.
Well, tomorrow's our election, and I'm going to go ahead and say it. Like, I heard some previous people speak of liking things Ron Paul said, but he just wasn't presidential enough, or wasn't... What's the word? Charismatic.
Yes.
What does that have to do with it? Look through history. How many presidents have we had that were...
Cleveland was not exactly, you know. But
that doesn't make or break a president.
But you know what?
Oh, he's not wearing the right sneakers.
Here's the sad thing about today's society.
They don't pay attention.
It does matter in today's society. It does. I mean, you may not, because you really like Ron Paul, but to the general public, you put somebody like that is older, and let's face it, he's kind of nerdy looking, you know, and he gets up there and he's very forceful.
We feast with our eyes first. It's
Yeah.
like I work in the restaurant. You know, we have to make sure the plates look clean. We look clean. We look presentable, because we look at, what we see forms an opinion.
See,
That's right. That's why they place the food and specific things in the menu. Yeah, it is.
This is what I take it with. And me being a Christian, in the Christian world, it's, I can go to a doctor or something like this. Oh, like, people were voting for Santorum because he said he's a Christian. Well, just because you say you're a Christian doesn't make you qualified for a job. And I mean, yeah, I'm probably going to get stoned for saying this because I am a Christian. But, just because, like, okay, this guy's a bass player and he wants to rock with us. Oh, was he any good? Well, he's a Christian. Well, is he any good?
That
you gotta have
the
your
defining factor is very, very low on my list of priorities. Probably like...
What, if he's any good?
No, if he's a Christian.
Well, that's not what I'm talking about. Ron Paul is a Christian, by the way, for those of you that don't know. But whatever, he is qualified for the job. Whether or not he looks it or acts like... well, he does act like it, and his record stands for it.
It is raining.
Okay, it's raining. I'm going to get to our guest because he's on hold. And he's calling all the way from Ireland, or we called him all the way from Ireland.
So I'm sure he really cares about our political situation here.
Our guest, Dr. Bob Curran. And let me tell you, he has written a bajillion books. Are you with us, Dr. Bob?
How are you? Yes, I do care about your politics.
You do?
I've been following the elections.
Yeah?
Well, you got another 6 months or so to keep following it. It's getting really old here.
I'm getting lost between Rick Santorum, Ron Paul, and Mitt Romney.
Well, Rick Santorum dropped out. Yeah. So it's Mitt and Ronnie now.
Ron Paul's still in.
Oh, yeah. They don't like to cover him.
It looks like Romney's going to get it.
Yeah, I think so. Well,
he hasn't earned my vote yet.
Unfortunately, you're speaking to an Obama man.
Are you?
We'll draw a veil over that.
Hey, everybody's got their own beliefs and vote the way they believe.
Absolutely.
Now, your books. I was looking through Amazon because I couldn't get a complete list. How many have you written?
This this is going to sound very big-headed. Are you speaking in English or in another language? Because I've written something like 40 books in English, but I'm looking at my latest book, or my latest two books, which have come out in Chinese. I also have a new book out in Russian. I have a new book, or I had a new book out just before Christmas in Polish. I have books in, let me see, Italian, French, German, Urdu, Yiddish, and a number of other languages.
Is it bad that I don't even know which one there was one of those that I had no clue what it was?
I don't know.
Now, did you write?
I've been writing books since 1995, and I've been working. I've been bringing out about 3 or 4 books a year in English, and some of these get translated into other languages. Some publishers contact me and say, "Would you do a book for us in this other language?" So I do whatever I'm asked.
Now, see, I thought the list was big. I had of 28 on Amazon. I was like, wow, he's written 28. Now I feel just silly. But your topics range. I mean,
run for the American presidency.
we have the undead. What is it? The Encyclopedia of the Undead.
Yep. We have things like vampires. We have. I put some books out simply so that I could refer to them in case you ask me very difficult questions.
We don't get difficult here.
We have man-made monsters. We have zombies. We have the undead. We have a new book coming out on American vampires. We have.
Wait.
Uh-oh.
There's a difference between European and American vampires?
Well, he has a book about Irish vampires.
But remember that whenever we look at films and TV, I mean, you've seen you've seen Buffy, you've seen Twilight, you've seen True Blood, you've seen stuff like that. Now that is nothing like the folkloric vampires, because you're asking me, is there a difference between European and American vampires?
See, I know American vampires all look like Johnny Depp.
I was at the cinema this afternoon because it's a public holiday here, and I took my children to see the new Avengers movie.
That's right. See, they still have class right there over in Europe.
Absolutely. But they did a trailer for Dark Shadows, which had Johnny Depp as Barnabas Collins.
Yeah, I want to see that movie.
Well, I'm going to see it as well, I think, but it's not out here over yet. You'll get it before us. But that is nothing like the vampires. For instance, in Tennessee, you have a vampire chair.
Huh?
Yes.
Huh?
Absolutely. In the Tennessee Hill Country, 2 chairs were made by the Odom brothers, one of which is said to be a vampire because it was given as a trade item to an old lady high in a cabin above the Hiawassee River near Charleston in Tennessee, and it is said that her spirit inhabits the chair. So if you sit in the chair, now, not all vampires, as you know, Jordan and Lola, drink blood. Some drink
the psychic
energy.
vampires, I've heard of that, where they just suck your will.
They can suck your will. They can suck your energy by a process like osmosis. So if you sit in the chair, it drains your energies and your vital signs until you begin to fade away. And the chair is supposed to be somewhere in Tennessee. In North Carolina, for example, the vampires are different from the vampires in South Carolina.
What?
Yeah. The vampires in North Carolina, we asked, Lola was asking, are they different from European? Yes, they are, but they are influenced by the European culture which has settled in America. So, in North Carolina, you're getting in, let's say, the Smoky Mountains, you're getting groups of Scots-Irish. So you get the traditions and beliefs of the Scots-Irish.
Uh-huh.
And in North Carolina, there is a well which will drink you, which will drink. This is a phenomenon from over here, from Ireland, in which we have what are called hungry wells, which come from the Great Irish Potato Famine times, 1846 to 1852.
Uh-huh.
And it is where, over here, it is where people drank from the wells when they were suffering from great hunger. And that hunger has passed into the well. So if you drink, you will be seized by the hunger, which will kill you. And you have similar wells in North Carolina.
Wow.
Now, in South Carolina, because the great export in the 1700s and the 1800s from South Carolina was from the southern states was not cotton but rice. This was the period of the Rice Kings. Now, the rice planters brought in slaves, mainly from Angola. So you get a Gullah tradition there. You get an African tradition in South Carolina where they have platais and boo daddies and what they call hants. Now, in order to get rid of a vampire over there, you don't hold up a crucifix or anything like that. What you do is you prevent the vampire from getting into your house or attacking you by wearing something blue. Because blue is a sacred color among certain tribes of Africans.
Really?
And it's not any old blue. It's a pale blue. It's a thing called a hant blue. And you paint your doorways, you paint your windowsills, you paint things around your house, this color, and it prevents vampires from getting in.
Really? It's not the garlic?
It's not the garlic at all.
TV has lied to me, Dr. Bob.
Now, up in New York State, for example, the overarching sort of culture there is Dutch. You're getting places like Brooklyn, Hoboken, Harlem, all Dutch names. Wall Street was the wall which Peter Stuyvesant, the last Dutch governor of New Amsterdam, now today New York, built to keep the British out. And that gives us Wall Street. But there you have what are called nachtmerrie, which comes from Holland, which are night visitors, which are creatures which are strongly associated with witchcraft. The most famous vampire was in New York, which was simply a shadow on the floor, which drew all the good out of the house.
Really?
So you have all these sort of things churning about in America.
Now, they wouldn't call that a shadow man?
You have shadow men.
Are those considered vampires? Because we always called them ghosts.
Can be. You see, I have come across things, not necessarily in America, but in other parts of the world, where shadow creatures were considered to be the souls of those who had possibly been died in childbirth or had been died before their time, and were drawing all the influence and good from the world around them to find their way back into the world. Down where I come from, down in the County Down, right behind my grandmother's house or not too far from my grandmother's house, there was what we call the caldric. Now, a caldric is a place which is set aside in a field for the burial of unbaptized infants and suicides, which the church could not bury because they had not been baptized or they had committed a sin. And you would not cross that after a certain time at night, because it was considered that the souls of those who were buried there clustered about and might possess you or do you harm. And so they were almost like shadows. And as the sun went down, let's say about 6 o'clock in the winter time, the shadows moved across, and you could see where the belief came from.
Lola?
Yeah, I'm just taking it all in.
I have stunned everybody to silence.
Well, while we're on, okay, do you consider vampires undead? Because you have the undead, you have vampires, and you have zombies. And we are some zombie lovers on the show.
Yeah.
Once again, and I'm going to give you a psychologist's answer. It depends what you mean by the undead. Now, we have the capacity.
Well, I guess we would be undead.
Well,
yeah, technically.
Well, then.
You scared me because I don't know who I'm talking to. But it depends what you mean, because we can invest the dead with all sorts of things, and it serves as an interpretation. Now, let me say to you, Jordan and Lola, supposing you have gone into a room, and I know I have, where somebody whom you knew very well lived or was about, who is now dead. Let me give you an example. I went into a room in a house which belonged to one of my aunts who had died, a great aunt who had died. Now, she always wore lavender. Mm-hmm. And long after she was dead, I went in and I could still smell the lavender. Now, whether or not that was me, I don't think there was a smell of lavender, because other people who came in, I said, do you smell lavender? And they said, no. Whether or not it was me associating all sorts of things with my dead great aunt, and projecting these sort of things into this, and creating a sort of undead or a ghost or whatever. Now, if you ask me, do I believe in the undead? I say it doesn't matter whether I believe in the undead or not, or whether I believe in vampires or werewolves or whatever. The more interesting question is, why would I want to believe in that? What does that fulfill within me? And how does it explain the world which I find around me? Because I believe, and this is a personal belief, that it serves as an interpretation and makes sense in a way of the world around us. So if we can't explain something, we begin to look at something like the undead. Whether death, of course, and I'm saying to you this to you, Jordan, perhaps as a Christian, is the last great mystery. No. We don't know what lies. We don't know for certain. Some people say yes, they may do, and I would not dispute with them that they may have some inkling. But for the most of us, we don't know what belongs on the other side. Nobody has ever come back really to tell us that we know. So it remains the last great mystery. We don't like to think that death is maybe the end. Yeah. There might be nothing on the other side. And we don't like to think so. Therefore, we invest in that people can come back. People can rise from the grave. People like that. Now, I don't want to offend anybody's beliefs, but I think that part of the notion of ghosts and spirits and all is possibly our own interpretation and possibly our own attempt to make sense of our own feelings, of our own longings, of our own desire for an explanation.
You know, I have to agree with you wholeheartedly in that. I think it is just, our way of, because it's hard to believe, and I don't believe that death is like, that's it, you're done, there's nothing else, that this is all there is. I don't want this to be all there is, because if it is, boy, have I screwed up over the years. So
yeah, but I think it is to give some sort of an order to our world and to the universe. We, as I say, there might be nothing on the other side. But we don't like to think that. We don't also like to think that the universe is simply chaos and anything can happen.
Yeah.
We try to find some sort of order, some sort of explanation. I think we are creatures which crave explanation. We want to know why things happen to us. Let me give you another example. I go up a ladder. Jordan goes up a ladder 6 times.
I don't like how you switch that around. Something's bad's about to happen to me.
He goes up a ladder 6 times, and it'll work either way. But he goes up a ladder 6 times and nothing happens to him. I go up a ladder once, and I fall off and break my leg. Mm-hmm. Now, the question there arises is, why does Jordan go up the ladder 6 times and nothing has happened to him? And I go up the ladder once and I fall off and break my leg. The answer which I come up with is there some sort of supernatural intervention or some sort of intervention by somebody else. Let's say somebody has cast a spell on me, or it's the fairies, or it's a ghost, or whatever. It's some sort of explanation which will account for me going up the ladder and falling off. And I should tell you that I'm sitting here and I've broken my small toe.
Oh, no. That is painful. I've done that too many times.
I turned yesterday. I was up in my son's bedroom and getting something, and he called me to tell me a football result, and I turned and clipped my toe on the edge of a chair which was sitting in his room, and broke the toe. But I would say, well, Michael has been in this room all the time and nothing has ever happened to him. I come in to get something and I turn and break my toe. Why?
The ghosties got you.
Absolutely. And that is how people began to explain. Now, nowadays, we're beginning to change our means of explanation. For example, people used to disappear, let's say, and then suddenly reappear. Where I was brought up, a man disappeared, went into a fairy fort, which was not too far from where we lived, and supposedly disappeared for 6 years, and then turned up again, and said he had been away with the fairies, but he couldn't remember.
Now, see, I would say it was with the spirits.
And that he was seen by a postman living with another woman some distance away, but people believed him, and they said he had been away with the fairies, and he couldn't believe it. And I knew other people who were, as they say in my part of the world, fairy-led. Nowadays, people come back and say they have been abducted by aliens, and have been away in flying saucers and whatever. And we begin to look for some sort of technological explanation. The basic questions are still there. The answers get slightly moved and become slightly different. So people say, well, I wasn't kidnapped by the fairies, but I was kidnapped by little men in flying saucers. So, or we begin to look for some sort of technological explanation. It's a government conspiracy. The government are working at some strange...
we call them mill labs.
Absolutely. And people say they have been away in Area 51 and places like that. And they have seen all sorts of weird things. So we're simply moving the goalposts, if you like. The questions are still there. I mean, why do we die? What's on the other side of death? Can we come back? Or are there other entities, other powers, other beings who can kidnap us? And if so, what are they? Are they fairies? Are they demons? Are they little green men in flying saucers? The questions are still there. The raft of explanations which come out are very, very different.
Well, that's like... there was a book by John Keel, The Mothman Prophecies.
Absolutely.
Of course, I'd read that. I talk about that all the time. But in there, it talks about China and how they would see dragons through the sky. And, he makes that connection to where it's UFOs, going through. They see the lights. Well, they think that's the dragon's breath soaring through the sky.
That's exactly right. Our culture allows us to interpret it in these ways. I said that things change, and possibly because our levels of technology, our so-called levels of sophistication change. We look back, let's say, to the medieval times in medieval Europe and say, weren't they very silly? Weren't to believe in all these things, to believe in vampires, to believe in ghosts and things like that. Now, isn't that silly? We wouldn't believe in that now. But they were using what was available to them. And sometimes through the power of the church, who told them that there were demons, who told them that there were angels, who told them that there were all sorts of beings who could interact with them. Sometimes other sources, wise women, people like that. So they dealt with the information and the parameters which were available to them, and they framed up the world in their way. And it is really, Jordan, about framing up the world and how you interact with it. If you want to see ghosts, people say, have you ever seen ghosts? I have never seen ghosts. I have seen things that pass for ghosts, but I can explain them, and I might be able to explain them in other ways. Other people have seen things which perhaps I can't explain, but which is very real to them, and the way in which they frame up the world. If they want to see ghosts, they'll see ghosts. And if they believe that there are vampires, then there are vampires.
I think we had a show not too long ago about somebody saying, we create these things in our mind. Kind of like everything's a stage. Go a little Shakespeare.
You're quoting Shakespeare at this time of the evening. Yeah. I wouldn't go so far as to say maybe we create these things. We interpret these.
Okay, that's better. Yeah.
We begin to look for some sort of rationale, because basically I suspect that mankind is a rational creature, and that he or she looks for some sort of rationalization and interpretation. Now, as I say, if you go up the ladder 6 times and nothing happens to you, I go up the ladder and fall off and break my leg. I interpret that. Some people might say, well, look, it's bad luck. or you didn't check that the ladder was secure, so it's your own.
You weren't holding your mouth right.
Oh, you didn't hold your mouth right. Other people may say, well, look, given the information and the culture, the cultural parameters which they have, may say, well, look, it's witchcraft, it's demons, it's whatever. So you pay us your money, you take your choice.
That is so true.
I do want to ask you this. When we were talking about vampires, we had a question. Are banshees considered vampires? If not, what's the difference?
No. Banshees. Now, banshees are interesting. Banshees are the forewarners of death. Now, I have come across stuff that banshees were actual people. Now, let me explain. If you were an old king of Ireland, let's say, because the banshee appears mainly in Irish, it also appears in Scots and to some extent in Wales, among the Celtic peoples. But if you were an old Irish king and you were considering going to war against your neighbour, or you were considering doing something against them, it would perhaps suit you to find out what the consequences of that action were. For instance, if you commenced battle against one of these kings, it would be in your best interest to know whether you would come back alive or not, if you had to lead your men in. So a banshee, a woman of the fairy, was almost a seeress.
A what? Say that again?
A seeress, or a person who foretold the future.
Yeah, I got you now.
So you went to a banshee, and there were banshees, because I came across references to banshees in the Royal House of Munster in Ireland. And what they did was they advised the king of the kings of Munster.
Is that kind of like the oracles of old days?
Indeed.
Okay.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Kind of like Merlin.
Or like Merlin, or indeed like the Witch of Endor.
Okay.
The woman with the python. You went and consulted them, and they told you, either through calling up spirits or whatever, that whether or not you would be advised to go to war, or whether or not you would be advised to invade another section of the country, or whatever, another kingdom. So gradually this has come down into a sort of cross between an oracle and a ghost, because the banshee is supposed to be a wailing woman. And now, in Celtic countries there are various types of banshee.
Uh-huh.
For instance, in Scotland, and I did mention Scotland, though the banshee is actually a washer at a ford. Now, there's a great story of the Irish hero Cuchulainn, who rode through the countryside, and he came to a river, and there was an old woman washing the clothes, blood-stained clothes, at the ford. And they said, that is Clota, the washer at the ford, from which actually the river Clyde in Scotland takes its name. And she was supposed to wash the clothes of all those who had been killed in battle. So if you saw your own clothes being washed, you knew you would not return from the battle alive.
Oh.
In, for instance, Brittany in France, which is a Celtic area of France, we have midnight washerwomen who wash the clothes of those who are about to die within a locality. So the banshee is supposed to cry. Now, originally she was only supposed to cry for those in the great houses of Ireland, those who had O in front of their name, as in O'Donnell and O'Connor and things like that.
Okay.
Or Mac. meaning both these meant son of. But this was the MacDonalds, the in Scotland, the MacLeods, things like that. Gradually, over the years, she has turned up with the lower orders in Irish and Celtic society, and she cries. I have heard or spoken to people who have heard her on council estates and in parts of cities and stuff like that. Just ordinary people for who the banshee is supposed to have cried. I truly have never heard the banshee, although I have heard things which might be interpreted as the banshee. For instance, whenever we lived out in the country, we had the cries of young foxes, which were very chilling at night if you were walking home along the lonely country roads.
Now, see, if I heard a woman crying and I knew there was a little body of water out there, I wouldn't go look, just in case.
Well, now I went down to see if I could see. She's supposed to be sometimes the description of her varies. Sometimes she's a young woman washing her hair in a river or in a pond. Sometimes she's a matronly figure, and sometimes she's an old hag. And this perhaps is the three aspects of the Celtic goddess: the young mother, the matron or the homemaker, and the old woman. So the three aspects of the Celtic goddess who presided over death, actually. But the banshee is not generally considered to be a vampire, although I think some films have turned her into something like that.
Yeah, maybe. I haven't seen really many movies about it. Have you?
I haven't seen it. I've heard plenty of people who claim to have heard the banshee, but I suspect that this comes from an ancient tradition. You see, as well as that, at death, up until the mid-1800s in Ireland, you could buy or pay what were called professional keeners. Now, keening was crying and weeping at a funeral, and the more women you had crying and weeping at your funeral, the more important you were in the community. So it was advisable to buy a few people in to wail and cry and scream at your funeral, and whether or not they were truly sorry at your going, I don't know. But the church, the Catholic Church, forbade this, I think, somewhere about 1845, professional keeners. So that all feeds in to the notion of the wailing woman, to the notion of foretelling of death.
Now, is she considered a fairy?
Well, the name
because
banshee actually means woman of the fairy, but the term fairy woman can refer to almost anybody. For instance, there were fairy women and fairy men in the parts of the Ireland where I was growing up. Now, if you could see me, Jordan, and could see the grey in my beard, you would know that that wasn't yesterday. So we're talking about back in the late 1940s, 1950s. And I grew up in a very rural area of Ireland, up here in the north. And there was still a very strong belief. And a fairy woman or a fairy man or a fairy doctor was almost like a wise person. My grandmother had some small training as a nurse, And in the days when there were few doctors about, the nearest doctor to us would have been about 11 miles away, and the roads were not good up into what. So the doctor would doctors when I was growing up in rural Ireland didn't have a car. In fact, the first person whom I saw with a car was a doctor. But mainly the doctor, when he came out to our house, came out in a horse and buggy, or as we called it, a horse and trap. So they didn't come out. So women, like my grandmother, who had some small medical training, were looked on almost as fairy women, as wise women. You have exactly the same in the Appalachian Mountains.
That's where we're at.
Granny women who came down and tended. They had charms, and they had, for instance, I saw an old man putting cobwebs on a open wound to heal it. Some of these were actually based in herbal remedies.
Yeah, old wives' tales and stuff like that.
Well, we refer to them as old wives' tales, yes, and you're quite right. But some of them had a basic spark of truth within them. So you had the same. Now, in the Appalachian Mountains, I have actually seen granny women operating and banishing burning. Now, how they did it, I don't know, but they put things on the burning to drive them away. My grandmother was used. Many of these women are fairy women and are fairy doctors. Most of whom were women, were attended at births, for example. Now, my grandmother used to go around before, if a child was born at the height of summer, my grandmother used to go around the house. She had some basic midwifery training, but she used to go around the house and look for bees' nests, because she thought that the bees, there was a belief that the bees would draw all the good from the child when it was born, because they were prolific. There was great swarms of them. So she got away all wasps' nests and bees' nests from there. But she officiated at the births until the doctor came, or in some cases the doctor didn't come. And she also, what we called washed corpses. When somebody died, she laid them out and sealed their eyes with 2 pennies and things like that. These were traditional things, and she was a traditional healer. Whenever people had cuts and accidents around the farm, because there was a big farming community, I remember a guy being brought in to my grandmother to be healed, who had cut himself with a scythe, cutting corn. And she did things like that, and people who had all sorts of ailments came to her. Other people, my grandmother didn't do this, but other people, other women in the countryside made potions. And
now, what's the difference between that and, let's say, witchcraft? Because that sounds like something similar that happened in, Salem, where they were hanging people.
Absolutely, and it is easy to see how some women, like my grandmother, and like the women round about the country who made potions and stuff, not only for humans but for animals. When animals took sick, there was a man in the area who had a cure for cattle who were ill at the time. But it is easy to see, Jordan, how this could be interpreted as witchcraft. Now, my grandmother was incredibly religious. She came from a Covenanting background, a Covenanting Presbyterian background. But she didn't consider this witchcraft. She simply considered this helping her neighbors, and she would never take any money. One of my grandfather's sisters. It was the only bit of witchcraft ever I saw. It was the casting of a curse. And I can tell you about that because you may know that in Celtic countries, only 5 people are allowed to curse. Now, cursing, we now look at cursing.
Now, what kind of cursing? Like bad words cursing, or like I banish you, that type of deal?
Cursing is now associated with bad language and stuff like that. Cursing among the Celts was an ancient art form.
Oh, okay.
Because only 5 people were entitled to curse. One was a saint. The other was a clergyman or a minister of religion. And there used to be a time called Cursing Sunday. Each year, when the church cast out a curse at those who had risen up against it. A widow, a poet, and a blacksmith. I went to see a blacksmith casting a curse because my grandmother's sister had taken up with a gentleman who kept a farm near her. Both of them were quite elderly, and both of them had agreed to get married.
Uh-huh.
And my great aunt decided that she would get married. I think the guy had more of an eye at her farm than anything else. But anyway, he took up with another woman and dumped my great aunt. Now,
what a jerk.
What had become a talk of the country because they were quite elderly, now it became a scandal in the country. And my great aunt went to the blacksmith to have him turn the anvil. Now, that went, he walked around the anvil 3 times anti-clockwise, and he spat into the water in which he cooled the iron. And he issued a curse. Now, I didn't hear the curses, but the curse worked.
Can you tell us what happened to him?
2 or 3 weeks, the man dropped dead.
Wow.
That's crazy.
And because he had been married before, but because it passed to the son was an alcoholic, and he drank himself out of the farm.
Wow.
And the farm had to be put up. And that was the blacksmith's curse. That was now, my great aunt could not go to any old blacksmith. It had to be a 3rd-generation blacksmith. And she took with her a bottle of whiskey. She couldn't give him money because that would break the charm.
Yeah.
But all these were, and people would say, "Oh well, now that." I can point to that, and I'm telling you this story as if it is true. But the interpretation we're putting on it is that there were curses, there were charms. I remember going to have to an old woman to have my ringworm cured. Ringworm is a pest which you get.
We get them here too.
Touching things where cattle have rubbed up against.
Well, I got a question that goes along with that. When you go for these healings, is it the treatment that heals you, or is it the faith in the treatment that heals you?
I think it could be a combination of both. No, and it is the context, because the lady whom I went to see to get my ringworm kit had got a charm. We always talk about charms in this. And the way she had got a charm was in a curious way. Her mother had died whenever she was born, and her father had raised her. But each night, it is said that her mother came back from the grave and suckled her. And this is how she got the charm. Now, the charm was that she had 3 small rods, which were obviously coated with something, because whenever she put them over the fire, they burned with a blue flame. She made a circle of smoke, and she told me to put my hand through the circle of smoke. And she said something. Now, I think it was a bit of the Bible. But she said, now you go, and she says in the morning, she says, that ringworm will be gone. And it was in my left hand. And so it was. Now, whether or not I believed it, whether or not my granny believed it, whether or not my family believed it, I don't know. But whether or not the woman herself believed it. But I think it was a combination of, there was an act, there was something done. Now, I have spoken to people who have been to monasteries where certain monks gave them amulets, and they paid for them, to clear certain things and said certain charms over them and things like that. It could be the belief, could be the actual action, which strengthens the belief. It might be something which they give you. Yeah. I don't know.
That's crazy.
I think it's cool.
It is, and I hate that it is what time it is right now because.
Damn it!
Are you allowed to say that?
Yes, I'm allowed to say that.
We're going to have you back on.
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe,
I will be delighted.
Maybe in the next couple months.
We will do that because we have only begun.
I know. I haven't even checked off like half the stuff on my list. We haven't talked about werewolves.
Well, we will talk about werewolves. I'll talk to you about werewolves and what we think werewolves are and things like that.
All right.
Dr. Bob Curran, is there a best way for you to sell your books?
If your listeners go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or anything, they will find me in profundity. All good bookstores. Mind you, I haven't come across a bad bookstore yet.
All right, Dr. Bob Curran, do you have a website?
I have a blog site.
A blog site.
It tends to be a bit boring, but have a look on the career set up by the publisher. It's Career Press. But just look me up on my blog site in Google, and I'll appear as if by magic.
All right. We'll talk to you later, Dr. Bob. Thank you very much for joining us.
And thank you for having me on, and have a good day, both yourself and Lola.
You too.
Doc.
Thank you.
All the best.
See you, Dr. Bob.
Bye.
Bye. That was a lot of fun.
You were right. You were right.
Never doubt me, young Padawan.
Okay.
Next week, we have the executive director, or the executive producer and creator of My Ghost Story on the Biography channel joining us. That should be kind of fun.
Yes, it should.
And it's funny, there was 2 posts today on Facebook like, oh my gosh, My Ghost Story is coming back on. And I was like, oh, guess what? He's coming on the show.
Good.
So that excites me. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Okay.
This is in primaries tomorrow. I'm not telling you who to vote for.
Just vote. If you don't vote, you can't bitch.
That's right.
That's the bottom line.
If you don't like either one, just do your research. It takes no time whatsoever to Google and find out who you like. Everything's on the internet.
Yeah.
Find out.
Yeah, don't just listen to TV.
Don't rely on
that kind
TV
of stuff.
stations and radio stations. Go do your own research.
Be an informed voter.
Yeah, this is important stuff.
Yes, it is.
Until next time, don't be afraid. Only believe.